Subscribe because it's free.
In the vast and different reaches of the cosmos, humankind has always been an enigma, a fragile, underestimated spark hidden among civilizations that flaunt their boundless intellect and calculated order. For countless eons, advanced species, with their cold perfection and towering technologies, dismiss humans as inconsequential. Yet beneath this veneer of insignificance lay a fierce, unyielding spirit, a dormant flame waiting for the slightest provocation to ignite into a blazing force of passion and rebellion. Humanity's past is written in the scars of survival and the triumph of stubborn persistence. Centuries ago, when the first interstellar encounters occurred, alien powers marveled at the crude simplicity of Earth's inhabitants. They observed a species that, despite its rudimentary tools and precarious existence, possessed an extraordinary ability to adapt, to overcome, and arise from the ashes of its failures. Historical records speak of battles fought with barely more than primitive weapons, of societal upheavals where the underdog turned the tide against overwhelming odds. These moments, often dismissed as anomalies by the galactic elite, were in fact the crucibles in which the raw essence of human defiance was forged. Every hardship, every slight, was absorbed and stored like kindling, poised to set the entire human spirit aflame. In the quiet corners of human existence, far from the prying eyes of distant overlords, there resided an unspoken truth, a collective consciousness that recognized a power hidden in anger. This was not a chaotic fury, but a precise, almost sacred anger born from centuries of oppression and humiliation. It was the understanding that every insult, every act of disdain, fueled a determination to rise above the limitations imposed by cosmic rulers. The human heart, unburdened by the cold rationality of its peers, embraced emotion as its ultimate strength. This raw, unrefined force was not meant for mindless destruction. It was a transformative power, capable of reshaping destinies and altering the course of history. The narrative unfolds not through the eyes of a single hero, but through the collective heartbeat of an entire species, a silent chorus of souls united by their shared longing for dignity and freedom. In this tale, no single face is given prominence, for each individual remains a nameless part of an unstoppable tide. The absence of distinct identities underscores a truth that transcends the individual, that the struggle, the anger, and the determination belong to every human being. In the interplay of shadows and light, in the interplay of whispered secrets and unspoken vows, humanity found its strength. Every clenched fist, every determined stride in the dark, served as a silent promise that the time for submission had long passed. The oppressive hand of alien domination had long sown seeds of despair across human settlements. Advanced species, secure in their technological superiority, imposed systems that stripped individuals of their dignity and stifled the human spirit. Yet, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, human communities nurtured a resilient hope, a hope that was as unyielding as it was subtle. This hope was built on a history of survival against insurmountable odds and a belief that the power of emotion, when channeled correctly, could topple even the mightiest of foes. With every slight, every injustice inflicted by an uncaring regime, the quiet determination of millions grew. It was a determination that did not roar from the rooftops, but simmered in the depths of every human soul, awaiting the moment to burst forth with unparalleled intensity. This collective emotion was not fueled by vengeance alone, but by a deep-seated understanding of what it meant to be human, a quality defined by vulnerability, creativity, and a relentless drive to overcome. There was a subtle beauty in the way human emotions intertwined with ingenuity. The same anger that could destroy was also the catalyst for creation. It was a dichotomy that set humanity apart. The capacity to harness raw emotion and transform it into a tool for change. Here, in the quiet before the storm, every human being became both a witness to history and a vital participant in its unfolding. A deep, almost palpable tension began to pervade everyday life, an undercurrent of anticipation that whispered of imminent change. Every minor injustice, every cold dismissal by the cosmic elite, added weight to a growing burden that was too immense to bear any longer. In factories and schools and the cramped quarters of forgotten colonies, the suppressed frustration began to manifest in subtle acts of defiance, a shared glance, a clenched jaw, an unspoken agreement that tomorrow would be different. These were the moments when human resilience shone through, when the spirit of rebellion quietly gathered strength in the hearts of those who had long been marginalized. The fabric of this narrative is woven from the threads of defiance and determination, a tapestry that tells the story of a species that would not be broken by the harsh judgments of an uncaring universe. Every experience of oppression, every moment of being dismissed as inferior, was etched into the collective memory of humankind. It was a memory that, rather than dragging them down, propelled them forward, toward a future where their emotions would no longer be seen as weaknesses, but as the very essence of their power. In the silent spaces between the stars, humanity prepared for a transformation that was as inevitable as it was monumental. The calm before the storm was more than a pause. It was a deliberate gathering of strength, an unspoken ritual that bound individuals together in a shared destiny. Even as alien civilizations celebrated their superiority with cold logic and relentless precision, humans knew that their unique ability to feel deeply would be their greatest weapon. This was not a story of blind rage, but of purposeful fury, a calculated decision to stand up against a universe that had long underestimated them. In that suspended moment, where the universe seemed to hold its breath, every human heartbeat echoed with the promise of revolution. The quiet murmurs of defiance, the subtle expressions of dissent, and the collective anticipation of a turning tide formed a symphony of resistance. There was a solemn understanding that when the time came, the hidden anger within every person would converge into an unstoppable force, one capable of challenging the most advanced and unyielding powers in existence. This is the moment of poised transformation, a moment that encapsulates the very spirit of what it means to be human. It is a silent vow, a promise etched in the very fabric of existence, that the light of human passion, though tempered by adversity, would one day ignite into a brilliant blaze capable of illuminating even the darkest corners of the cosmos. And so, beneath the cold glare of distant stars, a quiet storm was gathering, a storm born not of chaos, but the relentless, enduring will of the people who refuse to be diminished by the cosmos. Every whisper of wind, every distant echo in the void, carried with it the silent mantra of resilience, a reminder that beneath the vast expanse of indifference, humanity was alive, fierce, and ready to rise. The time for passive endurance was over. In the stillness of that fateful calm, the stage was being set for an eruption of human spirit that would forever alter the balance of power in the universe. The oppressive weight of injustice had long been a silent companion to every human life, but now that weight was manifesting into an undeniable tension, a force that surged beneath the surface of everyday existence. For years, the subtle mechanisms of control had been so thoroughly internalized that every act of degradation, every dismissive gesture by the distant tyrants, left its mark on the collective psyche. In crowded marketplaces, in quiet homes, in the muted corridors of forgotten outposts, a deep undercurrent of discontent was steadily building. A palpable energy fueled by memories of humiliation and the quiet determination that someday that injustice would be avenged. The turning point came with a singular, shattering event that shattered the brittle calm and ignited the smoldering anger in every heart. In one unforgettable moment, a well-respected member of the human community, a person known for their resilience and quiet strength, was subjected to a public display of cruelty by the alien authority. The act was calculated, a deliberate attempt to instill fear and assert dominance. Witnesses could do nothing but absorb the horror as the individual's dignity was stripped away in front of an audience that had long been taught to suppress such emotions. The sound of derision, the cold indifference of the oppressors, and the stark realization of vulnerability coalesced into a single moment of raw, unfiltered pain. That moment crystallized years of suffering into a definitive catalyst, a spark that would ignite a revolution born of pent-up anger and profound desire for justice. In the aftermath of that event, the internal landscape of the human spirit underwent a profound transformation. The shock and sorrow gave way to a resolute determination as each person processed the weight of what had been witnessed. The internal barriers that had once kept their emotions in check began to crumble, replaced by an urgent, uncompromising need to reclaim lost honor. No longer were feelings of anger and betrayal to be hidden behind forced smiles or whispered laments. They were now a rallying cry for change. The collective mind, which had been subdued by decades of silent endurance, awakened to the realization that the power of their emotion was not a liability, but the very source of their strength. The painful clarity of that moment reshaped their understanding of themselves, revealing that vulnerability and passion were inseparable from the capacity to rise and resist. Within hours, the reaction to the injustice rippled through human communities with an intensity that surprised even the most cautious souls. Word spread rapidly, not through formal channels, but through the raw, unfiltered communications of people desperate to share their newfound resolve. Conversations that had once been hushed and cautious erupted into declarations of defiance. In places where fear had long been the norm, there now emerged a cautious optimism, a belief that the oppressors had overstepped their bounds. Every shared glance, every whispered word, carried the promise of retaliation and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The collective grief transformed into an unyielding conviction that this moment of humiliation was not to be forgotten, but be honored as the genesis of a movement that would reshape the very fabric of their existence. Quiet acts of defiance began to materialize almost as instinctive responses to the outrage. In dimly lit corners and behind closed doors, small groups of determined individuals orchestrated their first moves. They set in motion carefully planned disruptions, calculated strikes against the mechanisms of alien control. These were not haphazard acts of rebellion, but rather precise, unified responses born of the shared realization that every minor act of resistance contributed to the larger struggle. Sabotage of surveillance networks, the dissemination of unfiltered truths, and the covert defacement of propaganda became the early vocabulary of dissent. Each act, though seemingly isolated, carried the unmistakable signature of a people unwilling to be defined by their oppressors. The coordinated energy of these initial rebellions was a testament to the power of human solidarity, an energy that had been nurtured in secret for too long. As the initial shock gave way to a more organized pattern of resistance, the movement began to gain a momentum that could not be ignored. The rebellion was no longer a series of isolated incidents, but coherent, evolving force. People from all corners of human society, workers, educators, veterans, found themselves bound by the same collective purpose. With every clandestine meeting and every encrypted transmission, the resolve to break free of alien domination crystallized further. This was a moment of clarity, when the suppressed anger of countless souls coalesced into a focused determination to reclaim autonomy and dignity. The shared purpose was unmistakable. The era of quiet subjugation was over, and a new chapter was about to be written, a chapter defined by unyielding defiance and an unbreakable spirit. The reaction from the oppressors was as swift as it was ineffective. Their attempts to quell the emerging uprising with standard protocols were met with a force of nature they had never anticipated. Rigid systems designed for control and suppression faltered in the face of a movement that was as fluid as it was passionate. Each countermeasure they employed only deepened the resentment and further validated the cause of the people. The more the regime tried to enforce order, the more the subtle whispers of rebellion transformed into roars of anger. The inherent flaw in their strategy was becoming ever more apparent. They had underestimated the power of human emotion. It was a power that had been carefully honed through centuries of struggle, a power that was now unleashing its full force without restraint. In the hearts and minds of those who had long suffered, a new consciousness was taking root. The realization that every slight and every act of humiliation had been a building block for a larger, unstoppable force imbued the people with a sense of pride and inevitability. Their anger was no longer a private sorrow. It had become the lifeblood of a revolution that promised to overturn the old order. In the silent determination of a laborer, in the defiant gaze of a student, in the steady hands of a healer, there now existed a common pulse, a pulse that echoed with the promise of change and the certainty that their actions would reverberate far beyond their own lives. Every act of defiance, no matter how small, was imbued with the conviction of community that had finally found its voice. In every clandestine act of sabotage, every act of civil disobedience, there was a quiet assertion that the time for submission had ended. The growing chorus of resistance was marked by precision and purpose, a clear manifestation of the collective will of a people united by shared suffering and a shared hope for a better future. The movement was building moment by moment, as every human being contributed to an emerging narrative of liberation. The events of that fateful day had irrevocably altered the balance of power. What was once a carefully maintained facade of subservience had given way to a raw and unfiltered demand for justice. In every whispered conversation, in every furtive meeting, there was an unspoken understanding that the oppressors had finally crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The act of cruelty had become a symbol, etched into the collective memory of a nation, of the price that would be exacted on those who dared to dehumanize them. The emotion that had surged forth was as potent as it was liberating, and it spread with the inevitability of a rising tide. In this moment of profound transformation, the people were no longer defined by their past miseries, but by the promise of a reimagined future. The clear resolve to reject the fate of eternal submission was palpable in every word spoken and every silent vow made in the aftermath of the injustice. It was an awakening, a moment when the human spirit, long confined and diminished, rose to claim its rightful place in the cosmos. The charge of defiance, born from a single act of brutality, had evolved into a movement that promised to reshape the destiny of an entire species. There was no turning back now. Every heart that had been ignited by that spark of fury pulsed with an undeniable truth. The era of fear and subjugation was over. The people, united by a shared trauma and a resolute would overcome, embraced their collective destiny with an intensity that left no room for compromise. This was the moment when the individual became the embodiment of a greater whole, and every action taken was a deliberate step toward a future defined by freedom and self-determination. In the wake of the uprising, the resolve of a people was clear. The time to speak softly had passed, replaced by a bold, unyielding call for justice. Each act of rebellion was not simply an isolated incident, but a critical stitch in the tapestry of a new era. An era where the suppressed fury of the past was transformed into the catalyst for an unstoppable movement. The pulse of the rebellion grew stronger with every passing moment, promising that the chains of oppression would soon be shattered forever, and the human spirit would soar free among the stars. The moment of no return arrived like a surge of wildfire ripping through a long-held silence, an irreversible shift where every heartbeat merged into a singular, unstoppable force. In that defining instant, a torrent of determination and unbridled resolve burst forth, leaving behind the remnants of cautious endurance. Every individual, driven by the collective weight of centuries of subjugation and quiet despair, found in themselves a fierce, incendiary energy. It was not an act of chaotic violence, but the deliberate, methodical unleashing of power long suppressed, a calculated convergence of raw emotion and strategic brilliance. Every calculated move carried the intensity of years spent quietly enduring the oppressive grip of a tyrannical regime. The synchronized response of the people was not born of unthinking impulse, but of a deep-seated understanding that the time for passive suffering had ended. With each deliberate step forward, the very essence of human resilience was put on display, a potent blend of innovation, resourcefulness, and unwavering conviction. The outburst was measured yet overwhelming, driven by a strategic clarity that transformed each act of rebellion into a precise, symbolic strike against an enemy that had underestimated the power of human passion. There was a palpable sense of unity in this surge of action, a feeling that every person was part of a larger, cohesive movement. The collective mind, honed by a history of small, nearly imperceptible acts of defiance, now surged forward with relentless, unified purpose. Every tactical maneuver, every daring exploit, reflected an intrinsic belief that ingenuity and emotion were inseparable tools in the fight for freedom. The interplay of instinct and intellect became evident in every decision made, as individuals repurposed the very means of their oppressors to carve out a future defined by their own values. In these moments, every calculated risk was a declaration that the human spirit could not be confined by cold, rigid systems of control. As this mighty uprising unfolded, every act of defiance was both a physical blow to oppression and an affirmation of a long-held truth, that adversity sparks innovation. The deliberate, almost surgical strikes against the entrenched order were as much about reclaiming dignity as they were about strategic advantage. With a precision born from years of subtle resistance, each calculated action dismantled a piece of the oppressive machinery. The energy of the rebellion was not a chaotic outburst, but a meticulously orchestrated symphony of resistance, a fusion of deliberate strategy and the raw power of deeply felt emotion. There were moments when the intensity of this collective effort transcended mere conflict and transformed into an almost spiritual assertion of humanity's intrinsic worth. In these rare instants, The air itself seemed to vibrate with the chorus of a people who had long been silenced. Every heartbeat, every defiant cry, resonated with the accumulated force of a generation that refused to be defined by humiliation. This was not a random eruption of violence, but the crystallization of years of disciplined, purposeful defiance, a reaffirmation that the strength of the human spirit is found in its ability to turn pain into power, fear into determination, and oppression into a catalyst for revolutionary change. The resistance moved with clarity of purpose that defied the predictable patterns of the oppressors. The enemy, relying on cold precision and systematic control, found itself increasingly at a loss in the face of a force that was as adaptable as it was passionate. Each attempt to suppress the uprising only served to reveal further vulnerabilities in the established order. The calculated countermeasures of the oppressors, built on assumptions of a docile and manageable populace, were systematically dismantled by a people who had learned that their emotions, when united, could be honed into a weapon more potent than any technological marvel. The deliberate, almost poetic precision of each act of sabotage, each tactical disruption, underscored a remarkable synthesis of raw emotion and reasoned strategy. In this transformative struggle, every individual action contributed to a larger narrative of liberation. The decisive, well-calibrated actions were not the isolated efforts of singular heroes, but the collective manifestation of a deeply ingrained will to be free. There was an inherent beauty in the fusion of risk and resolve, a beauty that shone through in every strategic victory and every measured retreat, all of which were steps toward an inevitable triumph over tyranny. The deliberate, exacting nature of the uprising spoke to the core of what it meant to be human, to channel intense, sometimes overwhelming emotions into actions that reshape reality itself. Every advance, every moment of breakthrough, was a clear sign that the era of quiet subjugation had been irrevocably ended. The clarity with which the people moved, the unity in their purpose, and the sheer determination evident in every deliberate act of rebellion testified to profound transformation that had taken root. The power that had long lain dormant was now unleashed in a cascade of strategic brilliance and heartfelt defiance, rewriting the rules of engagement. No longer would the oppressors dismiss the might of human resolve, for each precise, methodical strike was a reminder that emotion, when harnessed with purpose, is the cornerstone of true liberation. This surge of empowerment was a reminder that the human spirit, often underestimated and overlooked, possesses an extraordinary capacity for reinvention. In the face of insurmountable odds, every calculated risk taken by the people was imbued with the memories of past hardships and the promise of a reimagined future. The uprising was not merely a reaction to an immediate crisis, but a deliberate, long-planned reclamation of identity, a collective act of defiance that transcended the immediate conflict to signal a fundamental shift in the very nature of human existence. It was a powerful affirmation that the force of a united, passionate populace can redefine the balance of power in even the most indifferent corners of the cosmos. Every decisive maneuver echoed with the voices of those who had long suffered in silence, transforming their quiet anger into a formidable strategic force. The deliberate and precise actions, executed with unwavering determination, were a testament to the fact that the suppression of emotion only serves to strengthen its eventual outpouring. In that moment, the human spirit was reborn, a brilliant, incandescent force that could neither be predicted nor contained. The uprising was as much about reclaiming lost honor as it was about embracing the inherent strength that comes from a shared, unyielding commitment to justice. There was an undeniable, electrifying clarity in every move, a clarity that transformed the chaos of conflict into a deliberate march toward a future free of oppression. The power of human emotion, meticulously directed and expertly executed, was a revelation, a clear signal that the very elements of passion, intellect, and collective will were potent enough to dismantle even the most entrenched regimes. In the measured cadence of each act of resistance, the heartbeat of humanity was unmistakably heard, resounding with the promise that no force, however formidable, could ever truly silence a people united in the pursuit of their rightful destiny. In that unrelenting surge of liberation, every pulse of determination became a promise that the chains of subjugation would be shattered forever, and that the indomitable spirit of humanity would emerge victorious, blazing a trail toward a future defined not by oppression, but by unyielding freedom. In the quiet that followed the fierce storm of rebellion, a heavy silence settled over a world forever altered. The clash had subsided, leaving behind a landscape scarred by the struggle, and yet suffused with fragile hope that promised renewal. Amid the ruins of crumbled bastions and shattered control, the people found themselves confronting the raw aftermath of their collective uprising, a moment marked by both the cost of hard-won freedom and the seeds of a promising future. Every battered street and every fractured edifice testified to the immense sacrifice that had paved the way for liberation. There was no grand fanfare, no immediate return to normalcy. Instead, a sober reflection took hold. The echoes of past violence mingled with the tentative sounds of rebuilding as individuals, with steady resolve, began to clear debris and mend the broken infrastructure. In this time of introspection, the once fragmented communities discovered a renewed sense of unity, recognizing that every scar carried a lesson and every wound could someday heal. The atmosphere was thick with the understanding that true recovery required not only physical reconstruction, but also the rebuilding of trust and the healing of deep emotional fissures. The aftermath was not merely a pause in conflict, but a turning point, a moment to assess the cost of freedom and to honor the memories of those lost in the struggle. People gathered in small, intimate groups, sharing quiet words of remembrance and pledging to ensure that the past, with all its agonies and triumphs, would never be forgotten. This collective remembrance served as a solemn reminder of the price of oppression and the strength that had emerged from the crucible of adversity. It was an unspoken agreement that future generations must inherit not only a rebuilt society, but also the wisdom born of struggle, of vigilance that would guard against the return of tyranny. In the wake of the upheaval, the rebuilding process took on a dual nature. On one level, there was the practical task of restoring what had been destroyed. Homes, bridges, and communication networks were painstakingly repaired, often with innovative solutions born out of necessity. On another level, the people set about reconstructing the very fabric of their society. They reimagined a social order where every voice mattered, where the lessons of the past spurred progress rather than division. This was a time of collective reinvention, where the once dormant spark of creativity was reignited by the realization that every act of defiance had forged a path toward a future defined by resilience and hope. During this phase of transformation, the character of humanity was laid bare in its most authentic form. The anger that had once surged in moments of crisis was tempered by the need for reflection and measured progress. The tumultuous energy that had driven the uprising was gradually channeled into constructive endeavors. Communities began to craft new symbols of identity, a mosaic of cultural expressions that celebrated diversity, strength, and the indefatigable human spirit. In workshops, classrooms, and communal gatherings, ideas were exchanged with fervor that was both cautious and visionary. The hard-won lessons of the struggle led to the creation of institutions that would safeguard the principles of freedom and justice, ensuring that the flames of rebellion would evolve into the steady glow of progress. Amid the process of physical and societal reconstruction, individuals found themselves grappling with the deeper questions of identity and purpose. The uprising had revealed the dual-edged nature of human fury, its capacity to both destroy and rebuild. This introspection gave rise to a profound dialogue within the collective conscience. People questioned whether the raw intensity of their past anger could coexist with the tempered wisdom needed to navigate a future of uncertainty. They debated the balance between the righteous impulse for vengeance and the more enduring need for compassion and reconciliation. In this crucible of self-examination, many discovered that the struggle for dignity was as much about healing the soul as it was about dismantling oppressive systems. There emerged a clear realization that the cycle of conflict was never fully broken. While the immediate threat had been vanquished, the universe remained indifferent, and new challenges lurked beyond the horizon. This understanding instilled a cautious optimism, a recognition that every victory carried with it the responsibility to build a more just society, while remaining ever watchful of potential dangers. The scars of past battles served as a constant reminder that vigilance was the price of lasting freedom. With this knowledge, the people embraced the dual mandate of remembrance and renewal, acknowledging that the struggle for autonomy was an ongoing process that demanded both courage and humility. As the days turned into weeks and the initial chaos gave way to a steady rhythm of recovery, the spirit of human ingenuity shone through in unexpected ways. New methods of communication emerged, blending ancient oral traditions with modern technology, so that the stories of resilience could be passed down with clarity and emotion. Art, music, and literature flourished, each creative expression serving as both a tribute to the struggle and a beacon of hope for a better tomorrow. In these expressions, the collective memory of hardship transformed into a rich tapestry of cultural identity, a living archive of lessons learned and promises made. In the midst of rebuilding, the determination to foster a society that truly embodied freedom and equality took center stage. The leaders of the past, who had once enforced the harsh dictates of oppression, were gradually replaced by individuals who emerged from the common people, a diverse assembly united by a commitment to serve the greater good. These new voices, informed by the legacy of their predecessors and the raw energy of collective resistance, set about establishing systems of governance that prioritize transparency, empathy, and innovation. The reformed institutions were imbued with the understanding that power must be balanced by responsibility, and that true strength lay in the unity of purpose. Throughout this period of transformation, a quiet optimism pervaded the air. It was an optimism not born of naive hope, but of hard-earned conviction. The people had experienced the depths of despair and the heights of unyielding resistance, and in doing so, they had discovered an inner resilience that could not be so easily extinguished. Their shared history, marked by both profound loss and breathtaking triumph, became the foundation upon which a new era was built, a future where the lessons of the past would serve as guiding stars for a society committed to the ideals of justice, innovation, and unbridled freedom. As the remnants of the old order gave way to the promise of something greater, there remained an unspoken commitment to honor the past while forging ahead with deliberate purpose. The energy that had once erupted in a whirlwind of defiance now found expression in the careful nurturing of a society that valued both individual dignity and collective welfare. Every brick laid, every new idea embraced, was a testament to the enduring belief that the human spirit, tempered by both pain and passion, had the capacity to rebuild even the most shattered dreams. In the reflective quiet of this transformative time, the enduring truth became evident, that the struggle for liberation was not an endpoint but a continuous journey. The fire that had once fueled their uprising was now the steady, guiding light of a people committed to growth and understanding. In this period of calm after the storm, humanity stood poised to chart a course toward a future that balanced the raw power of its emotions with the wisdom gained from hard-won battles. It was a future where the lessons of resistance would inform every decision, and the legacy of the defiant past will illuminate the path to a more just and compassionate world. In the profound silence of recovery, every heartbeat echoed the promise of renewal, a promise that even in the aftermath of the most devastating conflicts, the spirit of humanity would continue to rise, resilient and unyielding, ready to embrace the dawn of a new era.